The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But for many of us who call ourselves empaths, that privilege feels impossibly out of reach. Why? Because from the very beginning, your identity was not formed by who you were, but by what others demanded from you. Imagine being a child in a house where emotions filled the air like smoke, where every slammed door, every sigh, every silence carried weight. You learned to read those signals faster than your peers learned to read books. Not because you were gifted, but because you were surviving. That's the uncomfortable truth Jung would want you to face. What you call empathy might not have started as a gift at all. It was a survival mechanism. And here's the paradox. The very skill that protected you back then may now be the same force that's straining you today. If you've ever collapsed on your bed after spending the day managing everyone else's emotions, wondering why your own soul feels so empty, you already know this truth. Your compassion has turned into a cage. You have mastered the art of sensing other people's storms, but you've forgotten how to stand in your own sunlight. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt guilty for saying no? Not just a mild discomfort, but a piercing, gut-wrenching guilt, as though by protecting your own energy, you were betraying some sacred duty? That guilt isn't proof of your moral goodness. It's the residue of a childhood contract you never consciously signed. Somewhere, long ago, you decided, if I take care of everyone else, maybe I'll be safe. Maybe I'll be loved. That contract kept you alive, but it also buried your authentic self under layers of obligation. Jung understood this pattern well. He saw that when we overdevelop one function, in this case, hyperempathy, the opposite function is forced into the unconscious. This is what he called the shadow. And your shadow, as an empath, is not your kindness, but your right to be selfish. Yes, selfish. To claim space, to say no, to have needs, to be angry, to be free. Think about how shocking that sounds. The empath's hidden shadow is not cruelty, but sovereignty. The very thing you were told to suppress is the very thing that will save you. Now, I know this may already feel unsettling. You may be thinking, but isn't selfishness the opposite of compassion? Won't I lose my heart if I claim my boundaries? That's the great lie. True compassion doesn't come from an empty vessel. It flows from overflow. When you give without tending to yourself, your kindness turns sour into resentment, fatigue, even silent rage. You've felt it, smiling on the outside, seething on the inside. That's not love. That's survival. Here's the invitation. What if you could begin to care for others from a place of fullness rather than emptiness? What if you could redefine empathy, not as self-erasure, but as self-integration? Jung called this individuation the process of becoming whole, of reclaiming the lost parts of yourself, of integrating your shadow. And for the empath, individuation begins the moment you dare to be selfish. Sacred selfishness, not in the sense of harming others, but in the sense of honoring yourself. Picture this. You walking into a room, no longer scanning it for danger, but standing tall, rooted, and calm. You still feel others, yes, but you are no longer pulled under by their waves. You choose when to engage and when to step back. That isn't coldness, that's mastery. That's what happens when the empath heals. You stop being a slave to other people's emotions, and you start becoming the author of your own life. And so, as we begin this journey together, I want you to hold one thought close. Your empathy was born in survival, but it does not have to end in exhaustion. There is a way to transform it. There is a way to move from compulsive caring to conscious loving. It starts here. If Section 1 was about facing the uncomfortable truth that empathy was born from survival, then now we must walk deeper into the hidden cost of that survival. Because the cost isn't only your exhaustion, It isn't only your endless guilt. The cost is that your authentic self, the one Jung insisted was your true privilege to become, has been exiled into the shadows. Think of your psyche as a house. In the front rooms, the ones guests see you display your compassion, your intuition, your availability. But in the basement, locked away, sits another part of you. The child who wanted to say no. The teenager who wanted freedom. The adult who longs to be unapologetically themselves. Every time you silence your needs for the sake of others, you're reinforcing those locks. And here's the cruel twist. The longer that shadow self remains suppressed, the louder it knocks. It doesn't disappear. It leaks out. Maybe in sudden bursts of anger you don't recognize. Maybe in quiet resentment that poisons your relationships. Maybe in secret fantasies of escape, even though you keep smiling for everyone else. Jung described this as the compensation principle. Whatever you push down into the unconscious doesn't vanish. It compensates by returning in opposite, distorted forms. For empaths, the suppressed need for boundaries often reappears as burnout, passive aggression, or complete withdrawal. That's why so many self-identified empaths eventually hit a wall. They go from giving endlessly to collapsing in silence. It isn't because their empathy failed, it's because their shadow demanded to be heard. I want you to remember this. Your exhaustion isn't a flaw, it's a signal. It's the shadow saying, you cannot keep sacrificing yourself. I will not let you. Have you noticed that when you're most tired, most irritable, it's not because of the one big crisis, but because of the 1,000 tiny times you abandoned yourself? The yeses you didn't want to say, the boundaries you swallowed, the times you stayed silent when you wanted to speak. Each one is a cut, and over years, they bleed you dry. Here's the hardest part to swallow. Society often praises you for this self-erasure. You're so kind. You're always there for everyone. We can always count on you. The world claps while you drown. And deep down, you know that applause doesn't feel like love. It feels like chains. Jung warned us about this trap. He said that when we live only through the persona, the mask society rewards, we lose the deeper connection to the self. For empaths, that mask is the always giving, always caring identity. It earns approval, but it costs your soul. So let me ask you directly. How long are you willing to keep betraying yourself just to keep applause? How long will you keep burning so others can stay warm? If these questions sting, it's because the truth inside you is already awake. It knows the cost. It's been whispering to you in every sleepless night, every sigh of resentment, every tear you cried when no one was watching. But here's the turning point. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your buried ally. The anger you feared, it's your compass. The selfishness you've rejected, it's your shield. The boundaries you've avoided, they're your doorway to freedom. What you've been running from is exactly what will save you. Jung's wisdom is clear. Integration, not denial, is the path to wholeness. So in this section, let me plant a seed. Every time you feel that resentment bubbling, every time fatigue knocks you flat, don't see it as weakness. See it as your shadow at the door, begging for recognition. This is not the end of your empathy. It's the beginning of your individuation. The cost of ignoring your shadow is slavery. The gift of embracing it is sovereignty. And it is waiting for you. There comes a moment in every empath's journey when exhaustion alone no longer explains the ache inside. It isn't just that you're tired, it's that you feel invisible in your own life. You've built a world where everyone else thrives because of your care, but you're left starving at the table you set. That moment, as painful as it is, marks the threshold of transformation. And the first step is one that sounds almost scandalous: sacred selfishness. Now, let me pause here. I know the word selfish feels poisonous to you. You've been conditioned to treat it as the greatest sin. To be selfish was to be cruel, to be thoughtless, to abandon others. But what if that definition was only half the story? Jung would argue that what we demonize most often carries the very medicine we need. For the empath, selfishness is not the death of love, it is the rebirth of balance. Sacred selfishness means this: I matter too. My needs, my rest, my desires, my boundaries. They are not luxuries. They are essential truths. When you begin to honor that truth, you do not become less compassionate. You become more real. And real compassion has depth. Real compassion has choice. Real compassion says, I will give when I can, but I will not bleed to prove my worth. Think of it like a well. If you spend years drawing water for others but never allow rain to refill the source, the well dries up. No one benefits, then not you, not them. But when you protect the well, when you let it fill, your water flows abundantly, freely, joyfully. That is sacred selfishness. It is the courage to tend to your source so that your giving is no longer duty but overflow. The challenge, of course, is guilt. The first time you say no, the first time you rest instead of rushing to rescue, your body will revolt with guilt. You'll hear the voices of childhood contracts whispering, you're failing them, you're unkind, you'll lose love. This is the shadow trying to pull you back into slavery. But guilt is not a signal that you're wrong. It is a sign that you're breaking a pattern, and patterns resist. Here's the secret. If you can sit with that guilt and not surrender to it, something incredible happens. On the other side of guilt is freedom. The guilt dissolves, and in its place you feel an unfamiliar but powerful sensation, peace. The peace of knowing you chose yourself without apology. That moment may feel small, but it is revolutionary. It is the first brick of the new foundation. Sacred selfishness is not about abandoning empathy. It is about giving empathy a spine. It's about saying, I can care for you without destroying myself. And when you live this way, something miraculous happens. People begin to respect you. They may resist at first, yes, but in time, they recognize the strength in your boundaries. They realize your yes now carries more weight because it is real, not forced. This is the turning point. The day you embrace sacred selfishness is the day you stop being a martyr and start being a creator. You are no longer just reacting to everyone's storms. You are building your own weather. And that is the first taste of freedom. For most empaths, anger is the forbidden emotion. From a young age, you were taught that anger was dangerous, destructive, unworthy of someone who was supposed to be good. Maybe you saw anger explode in the people around you, shouting, slamming doors, violence, and you swore to yourself, I will never be like that. So you swallowed it, you buried it, and over time you convinced yourself you didn't even have it. But here's the truth Jung would want you to face. The anger you fear is not your enemy, it is your compass. Think of anger as the body's alarm system. It signals when your boundaries have been crossed, when your dignity has been ignored, when your energy has been exploited. By rejecting anger, you've silenced the very signal that protects you. And what happens when the alarm system is cut? Intruders walk in freely. That's what your life has become. A house without locks, a door always open, where anyone's need, demand, or pain can flood in unchecked. No wonder you're exhausted. You've mistaken suppression for peace. But suppression is not peace, it's self-abandonment. Now, imagine reframing anger. Instead of seeing it as fire that burns everything down, see it as fire that cooks your food, warms your home, gives you light in the dark. anger, when integrated, is not chaos, but clarity. It tells you, this is not okay. It empowers you to say, this is where I end and you begin. Without it, boundaries are impossible. With it, boundaries become natural. And this is where the empath's transformation begins. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks. You decide who comes in, how long they stay, and under what conditions. Boundaries do not make you cruel, they make you trustworthy. Because people can sense when your yes is authentic and when it's poisoned by resentment. By reclaiming your anger, you purify your yes and your no. You give both weight, both honesty. I know some of you may feel resistance here. Maybe you're thinking, if I set boundaries, won't people leave me? Won't I be abandoned? That fear is real, but let me turn it around. If people only stay because you have no boundaries, are they truly with you, or are they with the version of you that sacrifices itself for them? Jung would argue that individuation, becoming whole, always involves the death of false attachments. Yes, some relationships may fall away when you begin to honor yourself, but those that remain, or those that arrive, will finally meet the real you. Think back to the moments when you said yes but wanted to say no. How did your body feel? Heavy, drained, almost resentful. Now picture a moment when you honored yourself, even in a small way. Perhaps you took a night to rest instead of answering the phone. Perhaps you told someone, gently but firmly, I can't do that for you. How did that feel? Maybe guilty at first, but underneath relief, even pride. That relief is the soul exhaling. That pride is your authentic self stepping out of the shadows. Jung reminded us that what we repress does not vanish. It grows stronger in the unconscious. Repressed anger becomes depression, anxiety, illness, or hidden hostility. But acknowledged anger becomes fuel. It is the rocket energy you need to launch out of survival mode into sovereignty. It is not about raging at the world. It is about standing tall in it. So let me ask you, what would your life look like if you trusted your anger instead of fearing it? What would shift if you saw it not as shame, but as guidance? Every empath's liberation begins the moment they stop apologizing for their fire. You are not here to be endlessly consumed. You are here to burn brightly, with intention, with clarity, with love that includes yourself. That is the gift of anger reclaimed. At this point in the journey, something profound begins to unfold. Once you've faced the truth of your survival-based empathy, once you've reclaimed sacred selfishness, once you've allowed anger to guide your boundaries, you stand at the doorway of individuation, Jung's word for the process of becoming whole. And here's the key. Individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about finally becoming who you were always meant to be. For the empath, this shift is monumental. You've lived so long as the rescuer, the healer, the one who absorbs and fixes. That identity became your safety, your pride, even your prison. But individuation demands more. It asks you to release the role of perpetual caretaker and step into the role of creator. Instead of waiting for life to pull you into other people's storms, you begin to chart your own course. You stop being a mirror of others' pain and start being a beacon of your own light. What does that look like in practice? It looks like making decisions not from fear of abandonment, but from alignment with your inner truth. It looks like choosing relationships where reciprocity exists, where your giving is matched by receiving. It looks like carving out time for your passions, your creativity, your joy, not as an afterthought, but as a priority. And most importantly, it looks like allowing yourself to be complex, to hold both compassion and self-interest, both tenderness and fire, both empathy and autonomy. Jung believed a self, the deeper center of the psyche, could only emerge when the persona and the shadow were integrated. For you, that means no longer hiding behind the mask of always kind, always available. It means owning your selfishness, your anger, your desires, and weaving them into your compassion rather than pretending they don't exist. This is the rebirth. This is the moment when your empathy transforms from compulsion to choice. And something beautiful happens when you arrive here. Your relationships shift. No longer do people come to you only to take. Instead, they are drawn to your wholeness, to your authenticity. They respect your boundaries because they feel your strength. They trust your yes because they know you are unafraid to say no. This is a new kind of power, not the power of control, but the power of presence. Let me be clear. Individuation is not a final destination. It is a lifelong unfolding. But once you've crossed this threshold, you can never return to the days of unconscious self-sacrifice. You've tasted the freedom of living as your full self, and that taste will always call you forward. You are no longer just an empath defined by survival. You are a creator, a sovereign being, a soul who finally belongs to themselves. Every journey has a turning point, but the journey of the empath is not about a single moment of change. It is about a lifetime of rediscovering what was always yours, your own wholeness. From the beginning, you were trained to survive by feeling others so deeply that you forgot how to feel yourself. You mistook exhaustion for compassion, guilt for morality, and self-erasure for love. But now, standing here, after walking through truth, shadow, anger, and individuation, you are beginning to see the deeper picture. Empathy is not your prison. It is your power once you claim it consciously. Jung often reminded us that the goal of life is not perfection, but wholeness. And wholeness is messy. It means holding contradictions. It means being kind without being a doormat, being strong without being cruel, being compassionate without being consumed. It means reclaiming the right to be human, not an angel. Angels serve endlessly. Humans must rest, protect, and create. The great lie of the empath is that you should strive to be angelic. The great truth of individuation is that you were always meant to be gloriously, unapologetically human. So where do you go from here? You begin by practicing the small acts of sovereignty. You listen to your body when it says no, and you honor it. You let guilt rise without letting it dictate your choices. You notice when resentment appears and use it as a guidepost. Somewhere, I abandoned myself. How can I return? These small acts build into a new identity, brick by brick, until one day you realize the old house of exhaustion has been replaced by a sanctuary of balance. And as you change, the world around you changes. This is the paradox Jung understood so well. When one person integrates their shadow, they don't just free themselves, they ripple into the collective. Your boundaries teach others how to set theirs. Your refusal to self-erase inspires others to honor their truth. Your authentic compassion, flowing from fullness rather than depletion, becomes a light others can trust. In healing yourself, you unconsciously give permission for others to heal, too. That is the quiet revolution of the empath who awakens. But let me offer a warning. The old patterns will try to return. People who benefited from your endless giving may resist your change. Your own guilt may whisper lies when you rest. This is not failure, this is the test. Individuation is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You will revisit the same lessons, but each time from a higher vantage point, with more wisdom, more courage, more strength. Trust that spiral. It means growth. Now, let me speak to the part of you still afraid, the part that wonders, Will I lose love if I change? Will I be too much or not enough? Hear this clearly. The love that depends on your self-abandonment is not love. It is a dependency. It is convenient. It is needed. The love that will find you when you live whole, that love is true. That love will not demand your erasure, but celebrate your fullness. And isn't that the love you've been seeking all along? So this is the invitation and the challenge. Stop surviving as an empath. Start living as a creator. Stop defining yourself only by what you absorb from others, and begin defining yourself by what you bring into the world. Your empathy is not meant to drown you. It is meant to guide you, to connect you, to deepen you, to remind you of our shared humanity. But it was never meant to replace you. Stand tall now. Feel the fire of your anger, the clarity of your boundaries, the power of your selfishness, the depth of your compassion. All of it belongs. All of it is you. And in claiming it, you become what Jung called individuated, whole, authentic, unshakable. The empath's journey is not about saving the world. It is about saving yourself, and in doing so, you will change the world without even trying.